friends, there is so much going on in the gospel passage we've just heard. We've just had the raising of Lazarus beforehand, where Jesus proved to those who are there that he is in fact the one who has authority over life. He's the source of life. And in the sign of raising Lazarus from the dead, Jesus proves to us that truth. Now, of course, those in authority, they want to kill Lazarus because it was this extraordinarily frightening display of power from Jesus that many people began to believe in Jesus. And of course, they couldn't have that. So they had to kill Lazarus as well. And amidst this battling of the divine will and the politics of this world, we see Jesus meeting with his friends, Martha, Mary, and of course Lazarus, whom he rose from the dead. And then Mary, she uses really expensive ointment to cover the feet of Jesus. Now, unbeknownst to her, as we now know, again, the benefit of hindsight, she's getting Jesus ready for his death, for his burial in particular. Because as we know, with the speed by which when Jesus was arrested, beaten, scourged and crucified, and then was hurriedly placed into the tomb because of the Sabbath, obviously then preventing any time for his body after death to be anointed. And that's what Mary's doing here. She's foretelling everyone who's present, and to you and me, of the burial of Christ. Now, what Mary is actually doing is, what I would say is a beautiful act of love for our blessed Lord. I mean, she's using expensive oil as a sign of her love for Jesus. And of course, Judas starts going, tutting and pointing the finger. And friends, now we begin to see the difference between Judas and Mary. Judas has placed political hopes in Jesus to fight back at the occupation of the Roman army in his home country. And now he's beginning to realize that Jesus is not this big political power he had hoped for. And what happens? He becomes angry, he becomes annoyed, and he becomes hurt, placing so much of his time and effort in following Jesus. For what? Friends, we face the same temptation today in our church, in our Christian communities, to place our hopes, our dreams on the church becoming a political power for social change. I mean, this pressure is relentless today, absolutely relentless. And for many of our priests and bishops, the pressure to become political and to stand up for nothing but literally social change, cultural fads and ideologies, to do so in order to become more popular is growing. And we are seeing the unfortunate fruit of that in our church today. I mean, an example is the unbelievable but disheartening public moves by many of my brother priests and bishops to turn their backs on Pope Francis and the church when he or the church doesn't do what they wanted to do politically and socially. And so what happens? They become annoyed, they become angry. And so what they start doing is mimicking Judas in today's gospel. Start pointing the fingers, tutting at the church and our sacred teaching. Outdated teaching type of stuff non-stop I hear. It's the 21st century, we've got to move on, to be with the times. The same old argument we've heard for over 2,000 years. And all this is doing is fueling division and rebellion, and threatens the unity of our churches and our Christian communities. I mean, as Fulton Sheen so rightly once said, reformers always try to reform the wrong thing. Instead of reforming the structures, they try to reform faith and the words of Christ himself. So true. Friends, this is the difference between Martin Luther and St. Francis, the difference between John Calvin and Catherine of Siena, and the difference today in our gospel between Mary and Judas. We need saints, not reformers. Trying to reform the words of Christ and trying to reform faith only fuels disunity. And as we know, and Christ made it very clear, God is not the father of disunity. The angelic prince of this world is. And division is what happens when we place an overconfidence and self-appointed superiority in our own unreasoned feelings and place them higher than the authority of sacred scripture and of Christ, either in our own persons or in the world around us. And it's what is happening currently in the church in Germany, who are now, it seems, in active rebellion against the Bishop of Rome. And this is going to have huge ripple effects for the rest of the church in the world. It's the Judas effect we don't expect, when we place feelings and emotions as superior to reason, and indeed, like I said, superior to Christ himself. It's what poor old Judas allowed to happen to himself. And friends, we would do well to emulate Mary and to give our time, our attention, and our love for Jesus more and more. Because when we place our hopes, our dreams, our love, and our attention to Jesus, we're never disappointed, never disillusioned. Jesus never offers false hope.